How we doing? How we been? Ecom Moose over here. And in today's video, we're going to be going over the full strategy on how we've been able to maintain $350,000 in just the last 3 days, plus today on Shopify. As you can see over here, November 13th to the 16th. Today is the 16th. And as you can see on the dashboard over here, just on the Shopify side, not even associating this with Amazon, we're already at $350,000 in sales. So really what we're going to cover in today's video is the full strategy behind this that is working as of today, so that you guys can take a lot of the things that we discussed in this video and hopefully apply it directly into your business. We're going to go over 6 key things that I focus on as of right now to unlock 6-figure days consistently. Now, this is only on one of our brands. We have multiple brands in our portfolio, not to mention also a wide array of different client brands that are also at this type of level of scale. So just a quick plug for myself, what I'll go into is if you actually do want to work one-on-one with me and my team, you need to be doing at least $100,000 a month, but we're opening up cohort number 3 in a week from today. So I want to take on a few more spots. We're going to take on 5 different people. So if you want, you can start applying now. If you are a good fit, I will review you myself and we'll get on a call to see if you actually qualify for the program. Quick scope on what the program actually is. The goal of what we're going to try to do is if you're above $100,000 a month, we're going to be trying to help you scale directly to $1 million plus per month within a 90-day time frame. And if you're already at that run rate, which quite a few of our clients already are, it will be to help you scale to multi-millions a month in scale. How we actually do this and how we execute, we can go into much more detail on the call, but long story short, we have one-on-one calls with myself directly, with my co-founders, with our team, and so on and so forth. We have daily communication outside of just the calls, SOPs, frameworks, and a whole lot more than that. The average client in our group right now is at $1 million a month. So if your goal is to get to that run rate, that's literally the average, meaning that a good portion of the people in our group are already above that. So really not that many better places to learn right now. There are key strategies that are actively working today than our group to humbly speak on that myself. With that getting out of the way though, let's actually go into the whole strategy. So in today's video, we're going to be going over a whole lot more sauce than typical. So this one, I always talk about this point, but really what I want to talk about is with this brand specifically, which is a subscription first based brand, I want to talk about the main levers that I look at. And especially if you're on the fence of thinking about working with us one-on-one, this is probably one of the key areas that we can help you with from a direct standpoint, which is the front end offer. And why the front end offer is so important, it's for a whole lot of reasons, right? Because I think the front end offer dictates almost every single metric within your business. So it goes all the way from your average order value to your conversion rate to lifetime value and other pieces there. So really what I want to focus on is actually the lifetime value aspect of a front end offer, because the offer is one of the biggest levers you have in your whole retention program, because it is essentially the doorway into your program, and the way that you frame your front end offer will be the way that your customers arrive into your subscription program. So the key main things that I want to talk about in this video is first off, opt-in rate, right? Because your front end offer will determine what percentage of new customers enter your subscription program. So there's a lot of different ways to try to optimize this. But a key benchmark that I try to work with my clients on, because a lot of them will come in and they'll be at like a 30%, 50% opt-in rate on the front end. So really the first part of what I really try to help them craft is how do we get that to 80, ideally 85% plus, which comes from having a very compelling offer. That's really the key aspect there. But this is one key lever. The next key lever is your subscription average order value. So this will be what your rebill amounts will be on the following orders, which obviously can have a lot to do with the front end pricing, different variables like that. But this is something that can directly be impacted on that front end offer. And then lastly, it's the actual cadence in which subscribers are rebilling. So is it on a monthly basis? Is it on a 90-day basis? And the reason why you actually may want to have customers on a 90-day basis is that 90-day basis, if we think about a few key things on that, is that's 3 months, right? So if you're sending deliveries for 3 months up front, what that means is you only have to pay for shipping once, which means that your margins on your subscription program will be a lot higher. So that's one thing to consider. The second thing to consider is that if you can do it in the right way, it means that you're going to front load more of the revenue, right? And that comes from bundle structures. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, which again, this is something that we go super deep on with each of our clients to go through all of the in-depth avenues that we've taken across our brands and also have helped clients with to come up with different ways to actually structure this part about it. But Cadence essentially also, you look at it, it means that you can front load a lot of that revenue that you're trying to recoup within the first 90 days if you get them to buy it on the front end, which means that you're essentially bypassing a lot of that initial churn that would have happened otherwise, right? So there's key ways to look at it where ideally you can do it in a way to get people to buy more of the products up front without hurting your conversion rate. So these are the key things to think about. So the front end offer, like this is the place that I've really obsessed over really the last year as a whole, because this is really where I've consistently found the biggest unlocks. And the reason why I think that is because there's a lot of other tactical things you can change, right? Like when you think about creatives, if you find a new winning creative, it has huge potential in your business, right? You could probably double your business as a result of winning creative. So there's massive leverage over there. A CRO test, there's a little bit less leverage because let's say you get a 10 to 20% spike, that will get you 10 to 20% more volume probably that you'll get in. You might be able to get additional scale out of it. So it's not going to double your business, but you're going to get some good momentum. When we look at actual offer reconstructions, you're changing the whole fundamentals of your actual business model, which means that it's not only going to be a potential 2x in your business, it can literally be a potential 10x. And that I've literally seen that happen multiple times, right, across different brands that we've worked where you get the offer and scale just becomes exponential. I actually have a video on this channel with one of our brands that shows we were at 67K a month. We tweaked the offer, which was the main component. There's obviously other variables as well. And within 90 days, we scaled that brand to above $1 million a month. That's literally more than a 10x in terms of where we're at. So that's not to say that you can't do the same with creatives. There's obviously, I don't want to compare all of them, but I think the difference is if you get this right, where you get your opt-in rate to be a high percentage, so let's just say like 85% plus, right? That means that out of all the work that you're doing to acquire new customers, if you could do this in a way that you don't hurt your conversion rate, which is the biggest obstacle to actually overcome, is how can you get your subscription opt-in rate to these higher rates without destroying the conversion rate on the front end? So that's really like the key challenge there. And if you can do that and get this amount of customers in, that's a massive thing, because now at the same level of conversion, instead of being at, let's say, 30% of people joining a subscription program, you've now 55% higher than where you were at before. Now you're 55% higher than where you were at before, right? So that is a fucking huge lever, because every single customer that you're bringing in, now you have 55% more people entering the subscription program on the front end. Subscription AOV, if you can figure out how to raise this by, let's say your subscription AOV is $40 and you can raise it to $60, you've now increased the whole monthly recurring revenue program by over 50%, meaning that you're making 50% more on every single customer on those additional rebills. Now, of course, there's a lot of other variables that you have to consider, like what's the churn on the back end, different things like that. So there's a lot of ways that you have to be considerate about testing this and maneuvering around it, but this is a huge lever as well. And then cadence, again, like if you can front load more and get your subscription, there's more margins to be unlocked and there's more front end profit. So the key thing here with all of these different components is that you want to figure out how to implement the ideal structure that doesn't hurt conversion rate. That's really the metric that I look at, is can I implement these different things without making my front end conversion rate go down? And if you do this right, not only do I not want my conversion rate to go down, can I actually do it in a way that I can get my conversion rate to go up? That is the ultimate way to reframe an offer. And if you can do all these pieces, you're now building the whole business model around that offer while actually making your acquisition more profitable, because your conversion rate can go up. And that is possible to do. That's something we've already done with multiple of our client brands. And I just want to give a quick plug again to myself. I'm sorry if I keep doing it, but I think if you're on the fence again of working with us in our program, this is one reason in itself that probably will pay for the whole program itself, because this is a key thing that I go deep with every single client directly, is working to craft the offer that can get them the highest subscription opt-in rate on the front end, can use some of our proprietary methods to actually increase the subscription AOV. There's some things that I think we're doing still lower key, and that's why I don't want to go too much into the details of how we look at it, but there's some interesting things that we're doing along that to really maximize that with not having high churn on the back end. And then of course, cadence. There's a lot of interesting structures that we're using there. So it's really figuring out what's the right optimal blend of that for your brand and helping you construct the perfect offer. So if you're interested, check the link out down below if you want to work with us directly on that. So the next piece is then retention within itself, right? And there's a few key variables that you should be looking at and really focused on when you're optimizing it, because again, it's one thing to get all these new people into the subscription program. It's another thing to then have them paying more on each rebill and also having the right cadence flow, right? But then it's another thing to actually understanding how you can optimize keeping all of those customers and keeping all that work that you've just done by optimizing that front end offer. So the first key thing that anyone should really be hyper focused on is your 90-day LTV. And the reason why you should be hyper focused on this is because this is going to be the main metrics that you focus on for actual acquisition costs, right? Because when I'm looking at it, I don't try to go beyond this point for targets that I'm looking at when I'm trying to acquire these new front end customers, because beyond that, it just becomes a lot more unpredictable. But within the 90-day time frame, it's a pretty predictable length of time. And also it's much more measurable to actually be able to opt. So make sure you're paying very close attention to what each of those individual months look like. And again, I go through this on a lot of videos. So just to quickly run through it, right? Is like, let's say month one, you have 70% of people renew. Month two, it's 30%. And then month three, it's 10%, right? These would be really shitty. I don't know why this is what came to head, but this is just what I thought about. This would be pretty good for month one. These wouldn't be as good. So again, let's say it's 85% of your new customers that are joining. That 15% is still a churn point, by the way. So it's something that, again, that comes into optimizing on the front end offer. To try to get that as close to 100% is obviously the ideal case scenario. Let's just say actually, because going back to where we started, let's say it's 30% on the front end. So our goal would actually be to optimize that to get it to somewhere like that. That's still a huge jump. It means 55% more people are entering the program. Now, if these are the numbers for the first 3 months, what that means is, let's say it's $50 on the AOV side. So just to do the quick math, and this 70% of $50 would equal $35. Then this would equal $15. Look at this mental math. And then this would be $5, right? So if we look at all this now coming together, we're talking about $55 on top of the initial $50 base. Sorry for my handwriting, guys. I always apologize, but must be said. So that equals 105, right? This is how we would look at the 90-day LTV. And this is a key number and metric. And again, I have tons of videos, so I'm not going to go too in depth of like how you actually use these metrics to scale. But these are the metrics that you're going to look at to really optimize your front end acquisition, is all within kind of this window of time. And that's why it's super important. And then again, going to this is like, we can front load this somehow to get this 105 up front by finding the right offer where we can have those rebilling cycles in the right cadence. Again, now you don't have to wait the full 90 days to recoup that revenue. That's why that's such a big variable, is the cadence aspect, which again usually will happen on the front end offer and how you're positioning and framing it. So that's why that's a key thing. Now, the next key thing is the 12-month LTV, because the thing is with all this is we don't want to sacrifice to just try to get as many customers in at an unsustainable offer that we're actually just going to burn through all of those customers super quickly after the 90 days and then not have any customers left after 12 months. Because ultimately, this number is really going to take the long-term profitability within your business. This is where you want to be. Like, the high-scale brands are usually breaking even within this 90-day window. They're not trying to make their profits. If you want to be more risk-averse, and especially if you're bootstrapping, then you probably do want to be making profits. So again, this is something that will vary depending on the business model and the business that you have. But this is really where the real profits come in. So you want to make sure that, like this example over here, this would be really bad because it means you're churning super hard over here, which means by the time we get to month 12, you're probably going to have no subscribers left in the program. A good benchmark for what your 12-month LTV would be is if you can still have 20% of customers in your program. This is super difficult to get to. But even if you can get to like even 10%, that's a pretty decent place to be. And then your goal can be to try to optimize it over time to get more people to sustain, right? So this is a key number that you want to look at, because this is something that actually really plays a huge part in the overall health of your business. And also from a private equity standpoint, this is a more important number. Really, most private equity firms will actually look at your 3-year LTV gross profit to CAC ratio. That's really like a key number. But this is also a softer metric that a lot of people will look at as well. So what is your LTV GP, meaning your lifetime value gross profit per customer to your, and that's a very important metric that you should be looking at. Now, next piece that you can look at is what's the average lifetime orders per customer. So on average, are customers going through 5 cadences? Are they going through 7 rebuild cadences? Are they going through 4 rebuild cadences? How many times is the average customer going through that cadence? This is also another metric that you should understand, and understand from a holistic view how you can optimize. This is a really cool one that you can look at for cadence. So going back to cadence, which why this is such a big thing is that let's say you see that your average customer is actually only rebuilding for 2 cycles. So what that means is if you can figure out how to get 90 days up front, you've now already increased everything by 33%, because what you're doing is if the average customer is only staying for 2 cycles and you automatically get it to 3 up front, you've already now outplayed your entire program as a whole. So this is a really cool number to look at because you can really tie that right back into cadences based on that number. This is a lot of theory just based on the retention stuff, but this is things that I'm looking at all the time based on these metrics. I'm then trying to identify where is that churn actually coming from. Is it from a specific email? Is it from too much communication? Is it from too little communication? Is it because, of the rebill reminder email? What exactly is the biggest thing that's causing my churn? And then how can I work on that churn point to actually optimize it? So there's different tools. I'm not going to name any of them, but there's tools that can show you exactly where those different churn points are coming from. A lot of the subscription platforms actually even have that built in. So that's something that you can start paying attention to, is which points of contact are usually causing churn and causing the spikes in churn, and where is the churn taking place from like an actual physical area within your communication process. Obviously, churn can happen independently of that, but still there's going to be places that you're going to find to be outliers of what is actually causing churn. And rule of thumb is really the less communication, the better, but still enough communication to make sure that customers are educated, to make sure that customers know the value of staying within the subscription program. So finding what the optimal point is to deliver what you're trying to say to customers, but without overstating yourself, because when you overstate yourself, that usually will cause more churn. So ultimately, these 2 points really come together because this is what allows people to come into the subscription program at the highest levels of efficiency. And then this is what ultimately keeps the people in the program for the longest amount of time to ultimately make you the longest amount of profit. So the profits don't necessarily come from here. This just gives you the most chance, the widest net to actually make those profits. And then this, by really optimizing this area of the business, which is the back-end communication style for the retention program, this is really where you keep the profits. Then the next big factor is your funnel and CRO setup. So there's a lot of different stuff that go into this. So I'm going to talk about what's relevant within this business model as a whole, which is there's a lot of tests that you're going to want to implement. So especially if you start testing things around these variables on the front end, like you're going to have to run these primarily as split tests. So you have to understand how to prioritize these different tests based on where you feel are the points of biggest leverage. And also you're comparing that to other tests. But I think my point of view on it is that these types of tests will almost always outweigh other independent CRO based tests, because again, like when we talk about a traditional test where we're just trying to improve conversion rate, that's amazing. But the difference is this is really going to fundamentally change your business model if you get that. So there's a lot more leverage in trying to spend time testing that. And that's why I really obsess over this, because I understand that if I get this right, it changes almost every single variable of the entire business and how I approach scaling the business. So that's super important to really focus on. So the way that I look at it from a high level view is we're always trying to implement tests, and this will depend on how much traffic that we're getting. Depending on the traffic, we just need to make sure that we have enough traffic to run statistically significant tests. When we run tests, we typically try to let them run for at least 7 days before shutting it off, even if we're at a point of statistical significance, just because we want to project out a full week cycle. Because, for example, if we run a test over a weekend, that can be non-conclusive data because it's a different time. There's obviously more higher levels of buying frequencies during that time. So I really want to see how a test will pan out for a full week where we can see all days of the week. Then from there, I want to get the statistical significance. So making sure that the conversions are proven to be at a 99% degree of confidence on the test before actually implementing it and running it live. And until then, we won't run the next test until we get to both of these variables. So again, like if this happens before the 7 days, then usually we won't stop the test until we get the full perspective of data, unless we see that it's destroying it and we feel super confident, or vice versa. If we see that the test is completely shitting the bed, then we might shut it down prematurely. So obviously there's cases outside of it, but general rule of thumb, this is how we actually go about implementing a lot of the tests that come here. And then obviously some other tests that we would run on the CRO standpoint. So this area here, this is usually the more important variables because again, like these are business model changes, whereas these are definitely major enhancers for scale, and it's super important. And creatives is really the lever that you have to play. But point number 4 is creatives quality times quantity. Now, again, this is something that I talk about way too much across my channel. So I'm going to try to give some unique perspectives on this within this video and try to keep it pretty brief as well. So really from a creative perspective, right, there's a lot of things we can talk about from the tactical standpoint, but more so to get to the level of scale where you're maintaining multi-six figures a day and trying to scale even beyond that point and get to multi-millions a month and stay at that level, you will need to really focus more so from like the individual creative strategy to how do you actually scale that across a team. So there's obviously a lot of different ways that you can break it down. It's going to be different for every single team. But the quick way that I like to look at this typically is what is the bandwidth that I have per editor and what is the bandwidth that I have per strategist, right? So let's say per strategist, I can have 20 creative briefs a week for, let's just call that for net new concepts, right? So they can make 20 net new concepts per week. And let's say each editor can do around 2 net new concepts per day, which means about 10 per week per editor, right? So this ratio to me would mean that per strategist, I need to have 2 editors. Now, it doesn't mean that those editors have to be directly only working with that strategist, but this is a general benchmark that you should be able to start to understand from your business. So like really trying to backtrack how much is your core strategist doing, or if you're the strategist, how many are you doing, right? Whether it's you or a strategist, like start to understand this number on an average basis from your team. And if you already have multiple people on your team, then try to understand what are the top performers doing that are allowing them to get more bandwidth than the lower performers and really try to evaluate that. And then the same thing obviously goes from a video editing standpoint as well. Now, this is obviously super relevant, but the other part, which we say over here, which is also the quality, which the quality is super important. And the way that you can really try to look at this is you should have proper naming conventions for the ads that go in your account. So whoever the strategist is, they should have their naming convention within the titles of the ad. Same with the editor, right? And this way, let's say the top people that are doing the most quantity, what does that actually look like from a quality perspective? What is the hit rate for those strategists if they're producing more? Let's say one strategist is producing 30 a week, the other is producing 10 a week, but then when you look at the hit rate, the one that's doing 10 a week is getting 3 of them to be a winner, where the one that is doing 30 a week, right, is only getting 1 to be a winner. So that hit rate is so much lower, and ultimately we have to remember the main thing that we're looking for is real winners in the account. So quantity is just something that gives you a better chance to produce winners, because the more that you produce, you just have a higher likelihood of hitting success. But we don't want just quantity for the sake of quantity, because then that's just spamming the account. You're wasting budget. Each test that you're doing, you have to spend more behind it. So we want quantity, but with good quality. So you're really trying to find the right blend of what that number is. So you really want to find what's the right ratio to get to these numbers. We can go much deeper into that, but that's something that you should really try to evaluate within your team. And then based on that, this really gives you the building block metrics for how you want to get to your target numbers, right? So let's say my goal now is I want to scale to 100 net new concepts a week in my account, which is a pretty healthy place to be. Based on that, now I can clearly see that to get to that, I would need 5 full-time strategists, and then I would need 10 full-time editors, right? So that's if I want to get to this level of scale on a monthly basis, right? Now, if it's a little bit less, you can play around with those numbers, but this gives you a pretty good benchmark of what that is and how to do this within a healthy way. So the first thing, again, is that you want to find the right and proper ratio based on data that you have within your team, or based on what you feel like is possible, right? And this can be from you writing creatives again, or the actual team that you have if you already have a team in place. And again, it's not about finding the person that's necessarily doing the most quantity. It's about finding the person that has the optimal efficiency from the blend of quantity and hit rate, and finding what that number should be, and then setting that as a benchmark when you bring in new hires to try to make sure that's the standard that is looked at as what you want to see from new members that come in. So again, this is just from these pieces of like strategists and editors for new video ads. But of course, outside of this, there's also going to be static ads. So in reality, this is going to get you to above 1,000 ads a month when we really look at this all together. But 100 new concepts, this is a really healthy place to be if you're in a scaling ad account and you're trying to get to. This is really where you want to be if you're trying to like approach to millions, to trying to get to 8 figures a month in scale. It obviously doesn't hurt to be there, but you obviously have to make sure it makes sense within your proportion of scale, how much budget you have within your ad account to allocate towards testing and all of those variables. So really, ultimately what you're doing is you're reverse engineering scale, right? You're trying to understand the maximum point of efficiency between the team that you have over here. And then based on that, you can determine based on whatever your quantity is that you want in the account, obviously based on the level of efficiency and making sure you're monitoring that, how many people you actually need on your team to get you to that level of scale. So just to backtrack a little bit, right? Like these pieces right here, let's circle these guys. My bad on that. But the front end offer, your retention, and then, actually implementing all of that on the front end. This is what's going to create the business model that you're scaling off of. So once you have all of this, you have to actually understand how you can read the numbers, how you can forecast some of those numbers, how you can use this as your basis to understanding what your targets are to scale your business. And this within itself does more than anything else, because this is the foundation of what you are actually scaling, right? This is then the lever that you actually use to maintain scale, right? So the more high quality creatives that you can put into your account, the better chance you have to be able to continue spending at these high levels, which means the more new customers that you're bringing into this whole ecosystem, right? So this is really the knob to scale. It's not the media buying, it's not other pieces like that. It's your creatives at the end of the day. That's like the thing that will determine how far you can scale all of this and how much you can actually maintain that level of scale. Then, you have this, which is taking all of the work that you've done over here and finding new places to distribute all of that, right? So Facebook and Google is the must-have. So Facebook is the thing that will cast the widest net for you. And then Google, if you're doing it right, can recoup on a lot of that profit and make sure that you're not fully reliant on the inefficiencies that come with Facebook, so that you can capture a lot of the people that are then going to Google to search different things. Amazon is also a huge variable, which I talk about a lot, which also does the same type of effect. But outside of that, I think which is really powerful is finding new cold traffic channels that can scale as well. And this is something difficult to do, but there's so much leverage in finding new channels, especially once you find the right offer setup, the right ecosystem, the right creatives and angles that are working for you. Then it's about how do you distill those angles to the channel and making it coherent to the way that people are viewing content within that channel format. So it's not usually as easy as just taking exactly what works and moving it over there, but it's finding the essence of your angle and making it contextual to the platform that you're trying to crack from a cold standpoint. So huge leverage there, huge unlocks of scale that can come as a result of this. So this would be, until you have all these pieces dialed in and you have a team that you feel confident can maintain those levels of scale within Meta, because Meta 9 times out of 10 will be the main traffic driver for your business. So until you feel like there's a team that's self-sustainable from the creative side, then I wouldn't try looking at this. But once you're at that place, then it's about how do you now do the same process, gain 20%, 30%, 40% more leverage in your scaling process, because you have other channels and you're hitting your ideal customer wherever they may be. Then point number 6 is a multi-product ecosystem. Now, this is a way that a lot of people are scaling. With this brand specifically, this is where we're looking at right now, is trying to add more front-end products in the ecosystem. This has been primarily reliant on one product right now. So we crack another product at that same level of scale, that can double the business again. And the thing is, once you start to understand all these variables and you find the frameworks that work for your business, this is something that then becomes applicable in a lot of different areas. And you're going to be able to see how this can resurface itself on a new product once you find your specific model that's working for you, the right offer structure, the right foundation over here, the right way to scale reliably good creatives into your account. And once you figure out how to crack multiple channels at the bare minimum, at least the Facebook Google combo, then it's okay, you can do this again with other products and it becomes a very repeatable system. So what I recommend over here is, if you have all of these pieces down, when you try to look at launching new products, don't go out and start launching new products within random brands, which is a big mistake that we made early on within our career over here within e-commerce. Is we started launching different products across different brands, which you don't get a lot of the compounding benefits. Whereas if you were to do that all within the same brand, same niche, because now when you get that extra leverage of scale, first off, you're probably going pretty adjacent. Even if you're going into a different problem that you're solving with the product and a different USP, it's probably still pretty adjacent from whatever your core product is doing, which means that you can get some crossover benefit from those products. You can also get a lot of leverage of cross-selling people on the back end. Through that will also help you boost the LTV, but also get more people into the front end product. And if you're doing this again with another subscription component, the same thing that we just went over applies, right? So you're getting now more people through a new avenue into a subscription program, which will now have its own retention cohorts and different optimizations. So this will go directly into the same core monthly recurring revenue stream that you have, which will help it build, compound, and grow at higher levels and higher rates, which all this kind of comes together to give you just economies of scale across a lot of different avenues. So one, the economies of scale will happen from your supplier standpoint, from a cash flow perspective through a lot of different avenues. Usually cost of goods as a whole, that goes back to the suppliers and getting that lower just because it's all happening through the same brand. And ultimately, when you want to sell your brand, you're stacking that valuation in a very coherent way. That's not to say that if you go through different brands, it's impossible to group all those and sell it together. It just is way easier if it's all under the same brand rather than the same umbrella if you want to sell it, because now it's all things that are in the same niche that all go together, and it just makes your brand inherently more valuable as a result of this. So this is what you can do once you start to get all these other core pieces down. To recap on the strategy, and again, this is the active strategy we're using right now to do these kinds of numbers, is the main variable that I'm thinking about all the time is the front-end offer monthly recurring revenue stream entry point, and really trying to optimize that every single week over week. Then on the back-end side, it's the retention. So how do we keep as many of those customers so that we can really maximize the amount of profit? This is then how we actually go about implementing all this on the front end. Now, again, there's some other areas on funnel that I didn't touch on here, which is also finding new funnel formats, new angles, like a lot of different stuff that also happen on the front end. But this is more from like a CRO standpoint on the core product page of really trying to implement these different variables there. Then it's about having the right creative so that you can scale this as much as possible and maintain that level of scale on your core traffic channel, which is going to most likely be Meta. Then it's about having at least the Facebook Google combo, but ideally you can find other cold traffic channels that will benefit from your product, assuming that you have a wide enough total addressable market to make that make sense. And once you have all these pieces coming in, then it's about creating a flywheel of new products that you can take the same essence of your core strategy all under the same brand to continuously do that process. So one last plug for myself, guys. If you're already doing $100,000 a month and you want to work on all of this stuff with me directly plus our team directly, which means that we're going to help you craft the right front-end offer with multiple options for that front-end offer to actually crack all these variables, from getting the max amount of customers to opt into your subscription program, figure out how we can maximize your subscription AOV, and find the right cadence for your actual offer, all while trying to at least keep your conversion rate the same. That's something that I will personally work with you one-on-one directly until we figure that piece out. Then all the different stuff that we've done on the retention side to really help you fast track a lot of that process and really help you guys maximize the amount of people that stay within those different cohorts, how we actually go about implementing all those tests from a fully tactical level, our whole creative system and process that we do there, our whole multi-channel ecosystem setup, and how we actually set all those different pieces up, and everything else that you guys could possibly want to know from what we've done within our business, really just helping you guys walk through it directly with me. Then my co-founders for anything that's more on the back end or financial side. We also have weekly group calls with our key team leads. So these are people that are actually running the day-to-day of the entire operation of our holding company. So you guys will be able to meet with the first-hand people that are actually executing on these entire strategic standpoints that I'm talking about over here, plus the SOPs and frameworks for all of this. Some big ones are just the different sheets and models that we use to look at your current numbers and see what you can actually afford to spend on your customer acquisition. That's a big thing that we go over with our different clients. And again, like I think one of the most underrated pieces is that you're going to be in a group that the average person in the group is doing over $1 million a month, meaning that the average is doing multi-millions a month. And then below that, there's a lot of really high level people. And that brings the average right now to $1 million a month, meaning that if your goal is to get to $1 million a month or multi-millions a month, this group, that is just literally the average right now from what we're seeing from the people that have joined the group. So very high caliber people in the group that, outside of just what we'll be providing on that one-on-one basis, it's also just having the people that are within this group. So if this sounds interesting to you and you are in the $100,000 plus per month range, we're taking 5 more people in for cohort number 3 before we then pause it for a little bit and then take on probably another 5 in about a month or so. So if you want to be one of the 5 that join, again, it's very limited because it is one-on-one access directly with me and the team, then click the link, apply down below, and hope to see some of the killers that you guys are that are watching this channel on the other side of this. So anyways, regardless, if you're not going to join, take some of this and try to apply this into your business. And if you are going to join, I'm excited to hopefully work with you very soon.